Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. Okay, so welcome everyone to this episode of the Peace and Possibilities podcast. My guest today is Elzet Blaauw, and we met through a LinkedIn group, a class that we were in. And I had reached out to this group of ladies that was in it, and I said, hey, how many of you love what you do? And if you do, you could be a guest on my podcast. And Elzet was the first person that said, there were probably other people that said, I love what I do, but I said, reach out to me and email me. And you were the only one that actually emailed me and said, yes, I want to be on your podcast. So that's why we're sitting here today. I love it. So thank you. And I know that you're excited to be on one, and it was your first time. So I'm so welcome. And yeah, it'll be fun to talk to you. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking forward.
Yeah, cool. So let's start with the first question. So obviously this podcast is about sharing stories with people that love what they do. And the reason it's so important, in my opinion, is so that we can see ourselves in other people and say, okay, wait a minute, someone else had this idea, or someone else had this, took this risk, or whatever it is. Just seeing these stories and helping people to say, like, if I can do it, you can do it too. And it's not necessarily always easy, but it's worth it usually. So let's start with your story. So I don't know I know that you live in South Africa now. I don't know if you grew up there. And then I also wanted to start with, what you're doing now, and then how you got to this spot in your life and career as your own. I know you're an entrepreneur. You are your own boss now. But did you always dream of doing this, and how you got here? Let's start with that.
Okay. So yes, I'm South African. I live in Cape Town, South Africa. It's a beautiful city. Anyone wants to come visit, let me know. And I am a writer. I write, I guess a ghostwriter is a proper word, but I don't necessarily like that word. But I help people share their message. So, and I'm an entrepreneur, but I always knew I wanted to write, but I didn't think it was a profession that I could pursue, because it was basically be an author of a novel or be a journalist that I saw as an option for being a writer.
Okay.
And neither of those, like I wanted to write a novel, but I felt you needed life experience to do that. And so I kind of always wanted to be a writer, but put it on the back burner. And I did study languages, but then I went into the business world and I was an employee, and being an entrepreneur wasn't really on my radar. And what's got me here is that, let me think how many years ago it was now, 3 years, more than 3 years ago, when I fell pregnant with my son, my firstborn. I was doing a job that I really loved. I always wrote at the companies where I was at, but it wasn't my main job description. So at that time I was project manager at a management consulting company. And it was a boutique management consulting company. So we were a small group of people, love the people that I work with. I still work with them on projects. But it was a really intense job. And I'd always wanted to take time off to spend with my children after they're born. And so when I became pregnant, it was like this tug inside of me: do I stay in the job that I love, or do I stay at home? And they were very supportive, and I took the leap and decided I'm going to stay at home. And at that stage, I kind of freelanced on the side a little bit, just because people knew what I had studied or that I liked to write, and they would ask me to help them out. And so I just decided I'm going to stay at home for a year and then see what happens. And then the work started coming to me, and I realized, well, I can be a mom and I can do work that I really love, and not have to choose between the two, but have both. So that's where I got to where I'm now.
Awesome. Yes, it's sometimes a lot of times when we're trying to figure out what we want to do, it's like we think it's all or nothing. I have to do this or I have to do that. And almost always it's a combination of a couple of things. Sometimes it's 5 things, but we just get in that frame of mind where, like you said, I have to write a novel or I have to be a journalist. It's like, no, why can't you write like I did, a self-help book? I mean, just because those aren't the only 2 ways to write. But if that's what you're thinking and no one's telling you any different and you're not asking anyone, then you're stuck in that mindset. And then you're like, how can I make my life fit around that? And it's like, that's why it's so important to ask questions and be curious and have people in your life that you can ask for support, because then you can get out of your head and like get some better ideas and then figure it out like you did.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have your own business, you're home with your son, you're able to work and on projects that you want to work on, and you are writing for other people, right? What do you think along the way? So you said you loved your management consulting, you liked that job and you liked the people you work with and you did a good job there, and you're still connected to them and working with them a little bit. So that says to me that you obviously built good relationships and were able to make a good life, even though it wasn't exactly what you wanted to be doing at the time. What do you think made you successful in that role and happy and peaceful along the way as you're trying to figure out what you wanted to do when you started your family?
So I think even in the jobs that I had before that, I always, in some sense, followed my passion. There was something about the job that really, it wasn't just a way to make money. Something spoke to me. And at that company, their mission was really to help small and medium-sized businesses optimize what they do so that they can grow and be better employers, serve their clients better. So the mission of the company spoke to me,
Okay.
and the people that I worked with. So because everyone, like, they didn't just come to work. They all
Right.
came to work to make a difference. And that working in that context really, I think, brought the best out of me. And even in the jobs that I had before that, as an employee, there was always something to work towards, like a worthy goal. And sometimes it was very clear that people would benefit from it. For me, it's all about the people at the end. But there was always some kind of worthy goal that would help people. And that motivated me, and I think brought the best out of me.
Yeah, that's I love what you said about people that you worked with that are coming to work to make a difference, because not everyone does that in the beginning, especially in the beginning of your career. Like, well, let's go do this so I can do the next thing. And I don't think people, especially younger people, realize how impactful that is, and that people can sense that you're just kind of like going through the motions. And if you can get to the place, like you said, where you're making a difference, and even if it's not the exact same role you want to be in at the time, do the best you can do in that role. Be the best person, bring your talents to it and your passions. And even if it's not everything that's all wrapped into everything you're passionate about, that doesn't mean you can't still make a difference in that role and do it really well, and then impress those people. And then that's just going to help you in your next role and in your next role. I don't think that that's always apparent though when you're first starting out. So that's a good point. Yeah.
And that was actually how I got that job. Before that, I was an executive assistant at a company, and the person who became my boss at the management consulting company consulted at that company, and he saw that I wasn't just taking the minutes in the meeting. I was engaged, and I was in my way trying to add value and taking responsibility of projects where no one was. And so when the time came, so it was kind of, I reached the end of that journey at that company, and I started speaking to them about it happened kind of in a strange way, but I was released from my previous company to go to them because they saw I didn't just do my job. I tried to go beyond just the job description or just getting paid at the end of the month. So I really believe in that. What you said, it's about bringing your best to the job, and then doors will open for you, and you will also discover. Because for me, at that stage, I was not even seeing writing as an option, even though it's something that I always wanted to do and something that I practice on my own. So, but going through that process, I got exposure to a lot of the business world, the tech world, management, and that I combined with writing, because now I usually work with businesses and help them do, content marketing, speaking to other businesses, business to business writing. And so all of those things was part of my journey to get me to where I am now. And I wouldn't have been able to get here if I was just, waiting for the opportunity to land in my lap.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, just sitting back and waiting, it's not when it happens. It's like, I try to tell this to my kids too. So that, if you're working hard at doing the right things and bringing your talents and passions and all of that, adding value, what you get, you might not get exactly what you think you need or want there at that one role or whatever it is, but somewhere else from the side you'll get something you were unexpected. It was unexpected. You're like, oh, what? That's weird. It came out of left field. It's like, no, not really. It came because you were doing all those other things over here. So when you're looking at it, it doesn't always seem like everything's connected, but the reason those opportunities are coming to you is because you were doing all those other things for that other person or whatever it was. So, which, yeah, those efforts are never going to go without some type of reward. It might not be so obvious, but yeah. All right. So let's see all right. So if you had, talking about young people, young people or even people that are middle-aged and trying to kind of like you, or they want to start a family, maybe do something on off on their own, or people that are just kind of floundering and not really figuring out what they want to do in the world. What advice would you have for them to find meaningful work and, where they can use their passions, and maybe they can't like you to do exactly what they want to do at the time, but what would you say to those people?
So I heard a stat somewhere that something like half of the jobs that will exist in 5 years don't exist right now. And when I decided what I'm going to study, content marketing was just beginning. It didn't really even have a name yet.
Okay.
So if content marketing had existed back then, I would have known that's a career path I would like to follow, but it didn't.
Right.
So if you can't see something that you want to do right now, do the next best thing that you can, because all of those steps will lead to something, like you said earlier, that's, it's beyond what you can conceive now, because it doesn't even necessarily exist right now. So I think I didn't realize this at the time. I was just trying, I didn't know. So only thing I could do was take the next step and the next step and the next step.
Right.
But I think that is how you get to do something that you're really passionate about.
I love that advice. Do the next best thing. And like you said, sometimes you're not always going to know what that is. But what I've been doing the last several years is asking the question, like, aloud, just putting it out there. Some people would say they pray, put it out to the universe, whatever. But if you're not unsure, like, ask for the signs. There's a awesome book called Ask and It's Given. It's all about, getting what you want, basically. But you can actually, because you can't always articulate exactly what you want. You just sometimes know that this is not what I want. But you can say, like, what's the next best thing? Like, what's the next best role or move, or who am I supposed to be talking to or emailing, or what website, like what information is coming to me that I need that I haven't discovered yet? Because just asking the question and putting it out there is like saying to the universe, I'm ready to get that next piece of wisdom or guidance or whatever it is. So bring it on. But if you're never asking the question, you're just kind of like in the mode working and not really like reflecting on whether you're happy or you have what you want. You can't hear the wisdom, right?
Yes, agree with you 100%. I think it's like asking the question opens yourself up to receive the answer. The answer is out there. But if you ask the question, even if it's a tentative question, even if the question, takes you here, but the answer is out there, definitely.
Yeah, you're right. I love that you ask the question and it's out there. The answer's out there. Sometimes the answer's already here. You just haven't asked it, and so it's not coming through, and it's not so obvious because you haven't actually said the words, whatever they are. I do this almost daily now, but it's a trick I wish I would have had in my 20s, because I was heads down and working hard and going to school and doing what I thought I needed to do, but I wasn't really asking. I was asking questions, but not all the really important ones that I ask now. Yeah, it's good advice. Okay, so your final question. So what do you wish you had learned earlier in your life or career? Any wisdom or guidance?
So I sometimes do it doesn't have any purpose. But I sometimes wonder, if this thing didn't happen in my life, or if I chose to study that, or if I had taken that job instead of this one, what would my life have been? And I always come back to, I wouldn't have chosen any other path. But I think something that I would have liked to learn earlier, or I would have liked to prioritize earlier, was to know how to run your own business, especially in terms of getting clients who really want what you offer consistently and delivering up to standard consistently. That process, because a lot of people, you can get one job, because I freelanced for years and years and years, but it was every now and again someone would come to me. It wasn't a business.
Yeah.
And I think if I had seen entrepreneurship as more of an option, or something that was at least somewhere in my future, I think I would have paid more attention to it. So even if I didn't think entrepreneurship was for me necessarily, if until very recently, if I heard the word entrepreneur, I thought that's not me. But now I am. Yeah. So if I just, opened myself up to the possibility that I could have a business one day, then I think I would have learned certain lessons earlier that would have been valuable.
Yeah, I love that. If you had known it was an option or something, that was possible for you, you would have been paying closer attention. It's smart. And you're right, you probably would have been, okay, that might be me one day, so I better tune in. And it just wasn't even something. I was the same way. I never even thought about, number one, having my own company, being my own boss, or to me, it was always like, if you have your own company, that means you have to manage people. And I did not want to manage people. I didn't want the headaches. I didn't want the stress. To me, that's the hardest part of it. And I'm like, that's not me. I don't want the headache. But I wasn't thinking of it, all of the good it could bring. I was just thinking, if I have my own company, it's going to be stressful. And
yes.
It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't even have to have, you don't even have to employ people. It could just be you.
Yes.
That's the best part. Yeah. Yeah.
So I felt very much the same. And if I heard entrepreneur business and I was thinking, someone who just works 24 hours a day and who feels like this heavy burden on their shoulders of having to look after all these people. And I think the definition of an entrepreneur has changed somewhat, or what it means to be an entrepreneur in the past, 15, 20 years. Yeah. But except for that, I think, I still feel that I could have, if I just opened my view a little bit, because it's not like that I didn't have people in my life who were business owners. They were. If I just open up the possibility, that's, it's part of your business name, just see it as a possibility. It's not a fact. It's not going to be definite, but it's a possibility. So let me just consider that possibility.
I love that. I love that we're ending on that, because that's why my company is called To Possibility and Beyond, because anything really is possible. People will say, no, what do you mean? Like, you can't go fly a plane or rent. It's like, you could, pretty much anything is possible. And if you think that it's not, then you're never going to accomplish it. So I just love that, the word, which is why it's part of my podcast, which is why it's part of my book title, because it really is it's so impactful to be seeing life that way instead of the opposite, which was like, well, I don't want this. What else can I do? It's like, it's a different mindset. It's saying, like, open up to the possibilities, open up to other options, open up to it, and then watch them come to you. Right?
Yes.
Well, thank you. I love talking to you. You have a lot of great wisdom and insight. It's fun to hear. It's fun to hear people coming along the journey and then getting to the place like you are, where you're now. You're like able to kind of design your life the way you want it to. It's inspiring, and it's just showing other people that it can be done if you can kind of think of it in another way, and not just so like black and white. It has to be this or it has to be that. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. It was really nice to talk to you.
It was great. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you love this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.